Okay.
Good afternoon, and I'm so excited to be here with my two guests. Anne has been on before, and she's a music teacher, and Nina has written a new book that we're going to hopefully share the screen with right now. You have a look at it, Of Sound Mind. And what this talks about is all the different brain research that supports the kind of thing that both Anne and I do in the classroom, and that is repeated readings and using music to teach reading. So without further ado, let's turn things over, and I'll begin by asking Nina to kind of give her background, and then Anne will do the same, and then we'll get into the questions. So take it away.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to talk with you, and I appreciate the kind of work that you do. It's very important, this unification of music and language. I'm a biologist. I'm a neuroscientist at Northwestern University, and I have written what I call my love letter to sound. I study sound and the brain, and this is my book, Of Sound Mind, and I very much hope that whoever listens to this will read the book.
And there will be a link to the book, and I already own a copy, and just lots of great information. Anne, you want to tell us a quick bit about yourself?
Ann Kay, live in Minnesota, longtime music teacher. In the 80s, I brought a Hungarian approach to Minnesota and taught music teachers an auditory processing approach to teaching music. It's called the Kodai approach. I also have certification in the ORF approach. So the idea that sound and making sense of it is really important to children. We call it music, music making. And I look at that as the primary means for developing our sonic minds or our sound minds. And so I'm so excited about this new book for people, the potential for practitioners.
Okay, well, let's get right into it. Let's start with the first question. What's the relationship between language and music in the brain?
Well, language is rooted in sound. So, before we learned to speak, we make sounds. And also, from an evolutionary standpoint, think about the fact that we have been communicating through sound for hundreds of thousands of years. And we've really only been using the written word for maybe a couple thousand years. So it is certainly the case that reading is rooted in sound, and a good deal of how we communicate using language is rooted in sound. And it is really a partnership that makes a lot of sense biologically. So, from a biological perspective, the same the same aspects of processing sound that are important for for processing sound when we are hearing it orally, or for processing language when we are hearing it orally or when we are reading it, really engages some of the same circuitry. And very importantly, and very much a theme of the book is that the sound mind, or the hearing brain, is vast, and the hearing brain engages how we think, so what we know, how we feel, how we move, and how we integrate information from other senses. So you can see that sound is really at the root of who we are as individuals, and is at the root of our ability to use language to communicate with each other.
Okay, you are a well-credentialed researcher, and in terms of brain development, uh, what is the difference between making music and listening to it?
Well, from a biological standpoint, making music really changes us in a deep, fundamental biological way. So, think of this analogy. I mean, I like to say, you're not going to get physically fit. You're not going to develop your muscles by watching sports. You actually need to do it. And there is a tremendous amount of benefit and good that can come from listening to music. I listen to music all the time, um, and it is listening to music can be used therapeutically as well. But in terms of really from a biological perspective, changing fundamentally how we respond to the world, how we respond to sound. It is the making of music, the engaging in the making of music, because, I talked about the hearing brain engaging our cognitive, sensory, motor, and reward systems. So, how we think, how we feel, how we move, and how we engage with our other senses. And music is really the jackpot because music involves all of those things. And all of those things are what we need for language, is what we need for almost anything. But from a biological perspective, if you continue to make these sound to meaning, sound to movement, sound to other senses, um, uh, links, your brain actually changes in a way so that even when you're asleep, your response to sound is going to be fundamentally different from someone else's response to sound. And making music is a way of um, developing your sound mind in a way that enables you, in particular, to pick up on the harmonics in sound, which are tremendously important, not only for distinguishing one instrument from another when they play the same note. The harmonics are what have us distinguish a B from a G. Our consonants and vowels are rich in harmonics, and timing is absolutely an essential part um, of making sense of sound. And again, learning to play a musical instrument and voice certainly counts. Making those sound to movement sound, sound is movement. Making those connections fundamentally changes who we are from a biological perspective. And I really go into this in considerable detail in the book because, first of all, I'm not just saying things. My goal in writing this book is to be conversational and to be informal and, to write in a way that any, a curious high school student could understand what I'm saying, a student who has no particular background in biology. And yet, 20% of the book is citations and references. So, what I am saying in this very informal way is based on the best science that we have available to us in the world. And I think that was very much an intended goal in writing this book.
As a reader of the book, I can totally endorse the fact that it is readable and takes what could have been a very complex and incomprehensible subject and turns it into something that someone from outside that brain research field can make sense of. So kudos. How about the ability, and this is something that I've heard Anne talk about, and the key to a lot of things that she does in the classroom. How is the ability to keep a beat and play rhythms related to reading achievement?
Well, reading, rhythm is an obvious fundamental part of music. Everybody knows that. But people aren't generally aware how important rhythm is in language. And rhythm is tremendously important in language. It tells us where words stop and start. It signals intent and our stress, our intonation. There is so much information in the rhythm of speech. You know, every Martin Luther King Day, my husband and I listen to the I Have a Dream speech. And, if I were just reading those words, you'd be kind of shifting in your chair and looking at your watch. And so much of the engagement and the power of that speech comes from his rhythm. And so one of the things that I find very exciting is in with rhythm, there are two kinds of rhythms that I have focused on. One is the beat, so following the beat. And in music, that's signaled by the time signature. So is the one happening, every is it in 3/4 time or in 4/4 time? Where is the one happening? So that's the beat is what you tap your foot to. And then there is the rhythm pattern. And the rhythm pattern is signaled by the note values and rests. So, you can think of a measure or two, and the pattern may go something like da 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 da. And that's the pattern. And you can tell that also happens over a long period of time. And it turns out that the ability to follow rhythmic patterns and the ability to follow a beat are actually pretty distinct skills. And one of the ways that I was wrong, one of the many ways I'm always wrong as a scientist, and that's why we have to do the science, is I thought that if you were good at one kind of rhythm activity, you'd be good at the other. But that's not the case at all. And you really cannot predict from how well a person follows a beat, from how well they can tap out a rhythmic pattern, how they're going to do on one kind of test based on the other kind of test. So, these are two skills that are important for language, because we know there have been a number of studies showing that the ability to follow patterns and the ability to keep a beat track with language skills and reading skills. And in music, inherently, you have both of these with your time signature and your note values. And I've put all this together. There's a lot of research from a number of different labs, and I put it together in a hearing journal perspective that I kind of put together the what I call the beat plum hypothesis, and I use these fruits to kind of help us understand that certain aspects of keeping a beat relate to precision in timing, and with the plum, we really need to have to keep the rhythmic aspects in our memory. That's where the M is from. And I will send that article to you. You can link it.
Wonderful.
But
I'll make sure there's a link to it in the blog.
Yeah, and again, it builds on many different studies when I've kind of put together this idea, and it's one that I think it's really important for teachers, to be thinking about, well, why is rhythm so important? And also, one of the things that we have looked at is, to supplement. There's nothing like actually making music, but you can supplement that and do forms of exercise with what actually Renee Fleming likes to call digital music medicine. And that is, like a program like Interactive Metronome, where you're interacting with computer signals, and you are strengthening some rhythm skills. And so all of this is what I talk about in this particular piece. But again, throughout the book, I think you will really get a good sense. There's a whole chapter on rhythm, and there are rhythms outside the head. So there are rhythms in speech, there are rhythms in music, and there are brain rhythms, there are biological rhythms, and there are connections between the rhythms outside the head and the rhythms inside the head. And I try to make sense of that and to explain why that is.
Okay, I have one other question, but I'm going to go off top or off the script here for a moment, because I'm one of the things that caught my eye in my ear is your discussion about in different languages how the language how it conveys meaning and feeling, and that just seems so important. That correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it might have been Mandarin Chinese, but that the rhythm of that really conveys emotions and other things that one wouldn't think that was the case. So do you see where I'm getting at here? That
Well, I mean, I think that the basic point that the language you speak certainly has different rhythm and timing and acoustic and meaningful components. I mean, that's true. And in fact, there's some beautiful work that Ani Patel put together. He put together a huge database looking at English and French composers, and he made connections between the language that they speak and the fact that English is much
oh dear, we just
more
froze.
stressed stresses in a composer like Elgar compared to French, which is more duration based. And so you have someone like Debussy, and you also have this impressionistic work that comes out of his brain. And so it's really kind of beautiful. And one of the ways that I again talk about in the book, there's a chapter on bilingualism and how the language we speak again is part of what makes us who we are. And there is a lot to be gained by speaking another language. It's a form of strengthening our sound mind. And it's also something that we discovered when we were working with underserved kids who were having language problems, that if they spoke another language, and so these were children who spoke Spanish and English, that speaking another language actually had a protective effect, that some of the biological signatures of poverty and of what we often see in underserved kids, if they spoke another language, both their brain response to sound and their classroom performance was stronger. And so this again is I think a really good reason to encourage kids to be proud of the languages that they speak, if they do speak more languages, and to really realize that the language and the languages you speak are a fundamental part of your biology.
Okay. The last question will then transition into some of the applications that Anne has made of your research ideas. But in this last question is, how does having better auditory processing and auditory working memory and beat synchronization impact reading achievement. And this is the essence of what Anne is doing. And she has found, and she's not the only one, that it really does. And it's some amazing impacts that she'll be talking about. But how does that happen?
Well, biologically, if we think about the hearing brain is vast, and it really engages how we think. So how we think consists of what we remember, what we know, what we pay attention to. That's how we think. So these are thinking skills that happen through sound. How we feel, that's our reward system. That's very linked to sound. How we move, again, just inherently, sound is the movement of air. You cannot produce sound without moving. Movement is important, and you need to be integrating this information from multiple senses, which is something you do when you read. You're connecting the sounds of words to movements of your hand on a page and to the symbols that you then create or read. And so if you strengthen your sound mind, if you strengthen your hearing brain, you will inherently be strengthening exactly those skills that we need for language development.
Okay, and now I'm going to turn things over to Anne, and I'll remind my readers that I will have a link to the other interview that she did, where she documented a great deal of wonderful work using basically the same kind of things that Brzezinski uses with repeated reading and some of the results she's gotten over the years. So given the science, what do you suggest that parents and teachers do to help enable all children's brains for reading? What are some of the things we can do as parents and teachers?
I know most of your blog followers are reading teachers. And I think Nina has said this a number of times, that it's kind of a stretch to understand that sound is related to reading because we can't see it. You always say that, you can't see it. It's like the wind. You can't see it, but you can see the effects of it. So the effects of having a really well-developed sound mind, hearing mind, are most reading teachers would not think that's anything to do with music making or anything to do with reading. So to me, music making is a natural human behavior. Music making is a form of movement. When she's talking about movement and feelings, and when you use music making with any child, babies on up, they focus, they activate. More areas of the brain are active. There's blood flow because they're breathing and singing and moving and all of that with this kind of invisible thing called the sound mind. But it develops auditory processing. Speech, neural hearing of speech. One of the studies that Nina's done has pursued hearing speech in noisy environments. Well, those would be classrooms, noisy environments. Kids who play or who sing and play instruments, let's say, can discern speech better. Now, how that is built, how would you develop? So our quest we started a nonprofit 7 years ago, Rock and Read Project. Our quest is to use singing to unlock the brain's potential for reading and learning. It's not just reading, but it's developing it's developing the sound mind. So how that transfers to kids. So with parents, I wrote a rap. Mama, rock your baby so sweet. Sing a song and tap along on baby to the beat. Daddy, bounce your baby so sweet. Dance to the music, put the beat in your feet. Have your child pat the beat. This is how it trains a vital neural network that the brain retains. Children who sing songs develop smarter brains that know more words and make greater gains. So mama, rock your baby, ABA form. Well, parents are like, oh, you mean something that simple? Something that simple. We're made to move and we're made to make music. So, but we have it in our culture that making music is some gift or something that I didn't get. And it can't be related to reading. Well, so what we've done is we found in many ways, I've been teaching teachers want to teach reading and math, try singing in Minneapolis public schools since 2005. And teachers take the course and do action research by using singing games, songs, poems, metric poems, rhythmic poems. The key is the child has to be active. So I love that you asked her the question, music making versus listening. I've had kindergarten teachers take our course and say, oh my gosh, we don't use any music. There's no music in the kindergarten. I'm like, there's no music in the kindergarten. So what's disappearing? Music making is disappearing off the playgrounds, out of the kindergarten rooms. When I grew up, every kindergarten teacher had a piano in their room, and they had basic piano skills was required for being a kindergarten teacher. We kept the beat. We did nursery rhymes. We walked the beat. We sang. We all, and it's all gone. And all the kindergarten teachers know that what they're doing for intervention for the kids who aren't reading isn't working. Tracing letters, visual stuff isn't working. And I think about people who, if reading literacy was a visual thing, we would have the people who are deaf or really hard of hearing would be just great. They would be fine readers. They aren't. They're not a high level of proficiency amongst people who are deaf in reading. It's an oral art form. And so what we do is help teachers, parents and teachers know that the natural human behaviors of singing, rocking baby, playing singing games, and then like taking who took the cookie from the cookie jar, these rhythmic games, Miss Mary, Mac, that were always part of playgrounds that are disappearing, that develop language over time, over a beat. And then you can use those, make your cookie jar. Who stole the, or who took, who took the cookie from the cookie jar? Who took the B from the cookie jar? B. Now, if our brain can't hear the difference between a B and a P, talks a lot about this, the mighty da, the mighty ba, the mighty ga, da, ba. If the brain can't discern the difference between a P and a B sound, how are you going to develop that? So we do it with games and practice, because all brains can learn. All brains can learn. But what we're finding is that children's auditory processing is not acute. It's not well developed, because these things are disappearing out of homes and the natural ways of developing them. So we're reintroducing singing games. And then I've got a curriculum I just written. I won't call it a curriculum. I've got 50 sequence lessons called A Song a Day, brain prep for pre-readers. We don't know if it's going to work. So we've got a bunch of kindergarten teachers and pre-K teachers that are going to pilot it. We're going to assess letter sound acquisition, pre and post, and we're going to assess music skills. I'm calling it basic musical assessment, musical fitness. So fit by 5. Children by age 5 should be able to keep a steady beat. I think I've seen in Nina's lab that they can predict at 3 years old by the way children process frequency following response, whether they're going to read well, whether they're going to struggle with reading. By the way they process sound. If we know that at 3 years old, what are we going to do about this as a culture? So to me, my burning thing is we have to help people understand that developing the sound mind is critical. And yes, it's going to lead to better language acquisition, better reading achievement. I say to the teachers, if you're teaching a 3rd grade classroom on Monday morning, this is what we're on Friday, on Monday morning, go back and have all your children close their eyes so they can't visually imprint on anything. Keep a steady beat on their laps and sing Twinkle. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. That kid who can't keep a steady beat and gets confused between rhythm and beat, that's your struggling reader. They go, no. And they come back And I said, did anybody try it? Oh my gosh, Ann, half my kids can't keep a steady beat. I'm like, well, how many are reading well? Well, half of them are not reading well. So, and they'll bring in videos of their kids. Who took the cookie? And I'm like, and they'll do who took like a sight word. Who took the and from the cookie jar? And I said, oh, that's very good. And what it is, oh, that's my top reading group. Let me show you my lowest reading group, 3rd grade. Who took? There's no sense of coordination. They can't keep a steady beat going. They can't speak over a beat. So to me, this is all sound processing, all auditory processing, auditory working memory. Oh, I teach a sight word one day, next day they can't remember it. And what I often say is Dr. Stanislaus Dehaene's work, who found that, language is it's a natural thing in every culture, but reading is not. And so he documented that neurons in the face recognition neurons get changed, reconstituted. I'm a layperson, and then have to connect to the sound processing. They get reformulated into recognizing letters, and that has to attach to, build the network, the dendrites to the sound processing. Well, what if the sound processing isn't very good? So I'm at the pre-stage. We're just going to try these lessons, and we'll see where we're at. But in the meantime, it's like trying to teach people how to be human, what all cultures do: sing, make music. And to me, it's the natural primary way that's key to developing our sound minds. And it will result in higher reading.
I'm going to chime in with a round of research, and folks ought to be looking at what Dr. Rosinski has been doing in the way of repeated readings performing songs, and he has gotten, for some very small amounts of time involved, gotten some major results in terms of improving fluency, at the same time improving comprehension. So there's really something to this. We're kind of at that point now where we're ready for any final thoughts and final remarks and stuff we skipped. So now's the time.
Well, I think what I'd like to say is that, your audience is people who teach reading. And I think that everything that Ann Kay said about the connections between reading and sound, of course, is something that is very biologically based. But I really hope, this is kind of my call to action. I hope that the reading teachers, will read my book, and I think you'll find that you already know pretty much everything that I say, but maybe you haven't quite thought about it that way before. And when I was getting ready to deliver my final copy to the publisher, I was thinking, why have I written this book? Everything that I have written is so obvious. But I think that often things that we do aren't that obvious, and I can't think of a better reader for my book than teachers of reading. And I hope, to me, it's much more important to have a reading teacher who reads the book and finds meaning in it. It's much more important that there be one teacher who finds that, compared to selling 20 books. What is important to me is that the message is actually thought about and incorporated into someone's life. And I think that will happen. And I'm very interested also in hearing the reactions of especially reading teachers. So if you do read the book and you have a reaction to it, there are certain things that resonate with you and certain things that don't, let me know.
Okay, and let me put that up there one last time, of Sound Mind, and there'll be links in the blog to it, and certainly any remarks that get made to the blog or out on there in Twitter land, certainly make you both aware of. So, any other final thoughts, or are we ready for the goodbye? There's a tradition, Ann already knows about this. I do a goodbye Zoom wave. But before we do that, before we say goodbye, any other thoughts?
There's one other thing, and that is, please, Sam, if you will also, for your listeners and readers, if you will put up a link to our magical website, which is
Oh,
called Brain
absolutely.
Vaults. That is a labor of love, and it really is written and put together for people who are interested in the work that we do. And there's a little tour bus on the top of the home page, and take the tour. It takes about 2 minutes, so you'll be able to find what you're looking for. And we use also a lot of illustrations. I have, even in my book, I have 80 illustrations, and I think it's very important to celebrate the art that is in science, and the art that is in teaching. And so I hope that people will enjoy what we do, and get something out of the website as well.
I'm rather certain of it.
I'd like to just thank Dr. Kraus for writing this book, because for the layperson, after decades of research, most scientists are not writing a book for the layperson. So I know that impetus is there to get the book out there in a way that people can understand the deep science, and you do that. And I'm on my second reading of the book and rediscovering different things. And so I highly recommend this to all teachers. It really changes, I think, how you look at what brain development is helpful for, for all of us. Thank you.
And I want to thank the pair of you, because you are the ideal a researcher who's out there and doing some magnificent work in research, but able to share it with the educator that's out there every day on the line, and opening that line of communication that sometimes doesn't happen. And that avoids a lot of confusion, misconceptions, and all the rest. So what a delightful event and what a work of love you have there of that book. I hope it's going to be on every all my teachers do have a look. So wow, what a powerful set of ideas we've got going on here. So that all said, now it's time to be silly for a second, because we are now going to do the goodbye Zoom wave. So we just put our hands up there and goodbye. Okay, thank you both so much. I totally appreciate you taking the time to do this, both of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.